Hi everyone. Today I will be taking class on integrated vector management. So these are the contents: introduction, selection criteria, IVC approach, the evolution, resistance, and the key elements. Okay. So nearly 82% of the global population lives in areas at risk from one or more vector-borne diseases. So what are the major vector-borne diseases that you know worldwide? So chikungunya, dengue, yellow fever, Zika, malaria, Japanese encephalitis, lymphatic filariasis, leishmaniasis, Chagas disease, human African sleeping sickness, plague, schistosomiasis. These are examples of vector-borne diseases. So in India, the mainly seen vector-borne diseases are malaria, dengue, lymphatic filariasis, Kala-Azar, Japanese encephalitis, and chikungunya. So these are the main diseases which are covered under the National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program in India. Okay. Look here. This is the map of the world map showing the regions where there is distribution of major vector-borne diseases. Okay. So India is having dark blue color. As expected. So, what are the vectors of public health importance? So, the vectors of public health importance are mosquito, housefly, sandfly, louse, rat, flea, ticks, itch, mite, cockroaches, etc. These are examples of vectors. So, they do not cause the disease. They are not a causative organism, but they carry the disease with them, so and they transmit it to other sources, other organisms. And that are generally called vectors. So how are the modes of transmission of diseases? Okay, it can be to direct contact. Okay, or it can be to mechanical transmission. So from disease organisms, they can take and deposit it fecally, regurgitate, vomit. So the flies can carry the human pathogens on this on their mouth parts, body, and leg hair. When they go and sit in the food items or the containers having food or water, and when humans consume it, they can get the disease. Okay. So the different ways: propagative, that's examples seen in plague; cyclopropagative in malaria; cyclodevelopmental method, that of biological transmission; transovarial, that is from parent to offspring; transstadial, when the from one stage to next stage, and the examples. So you are supposed to learn all this in your entomology class. Okay, so I'm not going through it because we shall be deviating from a topic. So in order to effectively carry out integrated vector management, you have to know the bionomics of the vectors. So what do you mean by bionomics? Bionomics deals with the study of the habit and habitat of the vectors. So the most common vectors we'll be discussing, of course, is obviously the mosquitoes. Okay. So IBM, we are mainly focusing on the mosquitoes. So we are discussing in that way. But you should know it's different for Kalas, sandflies, ticks, itch, mite, and all. The diseases mostly are mosquito-borne diseases. So I'll be focusing mostly on mosquitoes. So to effectively control vectors, it's essential to know the bionomics. That is the habit and habitat of the vectors. For their, for example, the distribution, breeding habit, the dispersal, their local, spatial, and seasonal distribution, their resting behavior, the biting behavior, and longevity. So how do all these affect the control measures that we are going to take? For example, when we come taking the longevity, okay. So for an vector to be efficient, it has to live for more than 10 to 12 days to complete the extrinsic incubation period of the parasite. Okay, so that is about the longevity. So there are certain things that increase the lifespan of the increase the lifespan and decrease the lifespan. So one among them is the temperature and humidity. So the temperature is above 30 degrees and below 16 degrees. It is not conducive. Okay, and conducive for the mosquito. And the relative humidity of 60% is considered necessary for completion of normal lifespan. So higher the relative humidity, higher the lifespan and activity. So at least 60% should be there. Okay. So when places where this is not met, you know that lifespan of the mosquito is not going to be complete. So the transmission of disease in such cases will also be less. Then coming to the biting preference, okay, biting behavior. Some are zoophilic, that means they bite animals. Some are anthropophilic, that means they bite man. So anthropozoophilic means they bite animals as well as men. Then resting habits. Coming to resting behavior, mostly endophily and exophily. Endophily means they rest mostly indoors, and exophily they rest mostly in the outdoors. Then the breeding habit. So Anopheles mosquitoes, they normally prefer clean, unpolluted and oxygenated water. Okay. But when it comes to Culex mosquitoes, they like dirty water. They prefer dirty water collections, stagnant drains, septic tanks, cesspools and burrow pits. So depending upon the breeding habits, you can focus more on the breeding habitats and try to eliminate them. Okay, that comes under environmental control. So I'll be going to that in detail. So when you know the breeding habits, you know where to target your action. Okay. Whereas Mansonia mosquitoes, they breed especially in freshwater ponds, tanks, swamps with floating vegetations. That is their signature mark. They need floating vegetations. Then coming to the time of biting, some are nocturnal biters. That means they bite only at night. Some are day and dusk biters. That is Aedes mosquito. They are fearless biters, vicious, and will persistently haunt human beings. Okay, they don't have day or night issues. They bite at daytime and night time. Anopheles mostly at night. Okay. Then there's something called as flight range. What do you mean by flight range? So flight range means how much will the mosquito fly. So average flight range and the dispersal shows, that means this is dispersal, they show how much the mosquito can travel. So the average flight range for a Culex mosquito is 1 kilometer, and they are strongly winged mosquitoes. So they due to the wind, they can be flying almost up to 11 kilometers also. That is in case of Culex. Okay. But when it comes to Mansonia, they are limited. Okay, they are limited. They don't fly much distance. So does the Aedes mosquito. So they don't fly much distance. So we see a group of Aedes mosquitoes, and if you target action in the nearby places, you can cover them. Okay, because they don't fly long distances. So you need to focus action only in the nearby places around where you find these mosquitoes. So that is how you can use this bionomics. You can know where to concentrate your action. Control measures have to be concentrated on. Okay. So the selection criteria for various vector control measures, they include effectiveness. For example, Anopheles culifacis. Okay, it's a type one of the primary Anopheles vectors. So they are resistant to DDT and HCH. Okay, they are important insecticides. So they are resistant to it. Whereas fluvialitis, Anopheles fluvialitis, they are susceptible to DDT. It also looks at the effectiveness of the method. Okay, safety. Will this method we cause any harmful effects if we use this? Then simplicity of use. Is it very difficult to use them? How frequently should we use them? That all affects the compliance. Okay, if it's something that you frequently use in almost every day, 2 times you have to do, that will be very difficult. Okay, because we need public community participation for it. So if it takes a lot of time and effort, people are going to comply to it or oblige to it. Okay, should be simple relatively. Cost, it should not be very expensive. Again, people won't use it, no one will use it. Time and effort. The type of benefit. Will it just remove only the larvae? Will it only remove the adults? Is it a temporary measure? It's a long time measure. Okay. The social acceptability. People say if they have some kind of this thing against certain methods, you can use it. Okay, if it affects their water, people won't be obliged, for example. So that such methods won't have social acceptability. Now whatever methods are using, the support requirements for it. So all these things should be kept in play a real important role when you decide upon the vector control measure. So how do you think the evolution of the integrated vector control happened? So vector control had been a part of malaria control activities since the early 20th century. So it is the pre-DDT era. So they relied heavily on larviciding. What do you mean by larvicide? Killing larvas and environment management for breeding habitats. So in the 1950s and 1970s, DDTs and other insecticides were extensively used. So they're effective. Okay, DDT and other insecticides were very effective, but there was development of insecticide resistance. Poor human acceptance and consequent environmental concerns against use of insecticides led to a rethinking in the vector control strategies. So even though it was very effective, the insect resistance all played an important role. So in 1980s, WHO was the one who proposed an integrated vector control strategy based on the principles of integrated pest management in agriculture. So what do you mean by the integrated vector control approach? It's defined as the utilization of all appropriate technological and management techniques to bring about an effective degree of vector suppression in a cost-effective manner. So it's a very self-explanatory definition. Utilization of all appropriate, it has to be appropriate, technological and management techniques. So it's not only technology, you are managing using different techniques to bring about an effective degree of vector suppression. The vector suppression has to be effective in a cost effective manner, not very costly, the optimal budget. So it is utilization of appropriate technological and management techniques to bring about an effective vector suppression in a cost effective manner. So the rationale is a need to overcome challenges experienced with conventional single intervention approaches to vector control. So it's only environmental control, only chemical control, only biological control. That's not going to be effective. And long term can cause severe certain things such as resistance. But you cannot do away with the chemical altogether also. So you have to employ numerous strategies at the same time for it to be effective. So this approach seeks to improve the efficacy, cost effectiveness, ecological soundness and sustainability of disease vector control. Okay. So this is mostly for mosquito control measures. So when they ask about integrated vector control, I'll show you one more diagram. That's a better one. Okay. Now I'm going through this mosquito thing. I told you I will be focusing on mosquitoes. So the first one is the anti-larval measures. Then the anti-adult measures, protection against mosquito bites, and then legislative control. So what are the anti-larval methods? So whatever larva is being laid, here using larvicides, either killing the larva, making the breeding habitat unsuitable so that they can't lay down the larva in that place, whatever. Just anything against the larva, anti-larval measures. Okay. So the environmental control, the most important step in reducing the number of mosquitoes. Okay, because it's a permanent method. Okay, because you are doing away with the breeding habitats, so they can't breed. If you remove all the suitable, appropriate breeding habits of that particular mosquito, I told you for now, less clean water, for EB's dirty water, I mean QLEX dirty water. So if you focus on that type of breeding habitat and take action, it has more of a permanent effect and it's much more effective. Okay. So most important step in reducing the number of mosquitoes. Success depends on community involvement and multi-sectoral coordination also. So the government can't go on doing it each and every place. So the community also has to play a very important role, as well as other sectors also should coordinate it. See, number one, elimination of the breeding places, that is source reduction, reducing the sources from multiplying, taking bird, whatever, like filling and leveling and drainage of breeding places. Okay, the proper disposal of refuse in other ways, cleanliness in and around the houses, observing dry day, that is intermittent, using intermittent irrigation. These are all methods of environmental control. So when you fill, if QLEX mosquito wants dirty places and there's holes in the road, it has water collection and it is dirty, then you fill that road, that area cannot be used for breeding by the QLEX mosquito. So that's an environmental control measure. It's an example. You can drain off the breeding area, you can drain off the water. Okay. Then taking away the waste, properly disposing them, the water doesn't become dirty. Okay. So cleanliness, observing dry day. Dry day means every day, every week, one day you are observing dry day. So that day in the house you are going to remove all the water collections that you can see, all the stagnant water collections on the water pots, under the fridge and near the AC, wherever it is, in the coconut shells, in the rubber tires, wherever, plastic containers, wherever it is. Once a week you are observing dry day. So you are eliminating the breeding places of the mosquitoes. Okay. So integrated vector control approach using the chemical and biological control. Okay. So chemical control. Chemical controls is mostly insecticides. Okay. Insecticides, there's petroleum oil, diesel oil, larvicidal oil, used as a suspension. So the on the water surface it acts as a film, thin film, and cuts off supply of oxygen, and you can't lay, and the mosquitoes can't lay eggs, they can't breed. Okay. Then there's they are stomach poisons, parisgreen and sodium fluoride. So that means it's the granules you put into water and the mosquitoes consume, and the bacteria when these granules get ingested, they do away with the larva. Okay. Then there's fumigants, sulfur dioxide, HCN, methyl bromide, carbon disulfide. Then there is organophosphorus compounds like fendione, phenitrilethene, malathion, temifos. They are all emulsifying concentrations. Okay. So among this four, temifos is the one doesn't have much toxicity. So you can apply it in water also. Okay. Malathion, phenitrilethene, fenthion has the highest toxicity. The duration is from 2 to 11 weeks. So the higher the duration, more chance of toxicity. Okay. Then there are residual sprays. Residual sprays commonly used are DDT, malathion, propoxur, HCH also. Space sprays means the most commonly used is pyrethrum extracts. And malathion and phenitrophenone is used for ultra low volume fogging, ULV fogging. Then there are insect growth regulators like diflubenzuron, metoprene, pyriproxyfen. So they inhibit the growth. Of the insects. So they are also suspension granules. And there are bacterial larvicides like bacterial thuringiensis, bacterial sphaericus. So Bacillus thuringiensis and Bacillus sphaericus. So Bacillus thuringiensis is an insecticide with unusual properties. So it's a natural occurring bacterium common in soils throughout the world. They produce proteins that reacts with the cells of the gut lining of susceptible insects. These proteins paralyze the digestive system and the infected insect stops feeding within hours. So the affected insects generally die from starvation, which can take several days. So if the dead bacteria contains the proteins, they can also be effective insecticides. So they lead to starvation because they paralyze the digestive system. Okay. They go into starvation. That is in the case of Bacillus thuringiensis and Bacillus sphaericus. A set of fungi like Coelomyces and Microsporidium. They are obligate parasites. Okay, they do not attack other insects or other animals. These fungi, they enter the coelom of the living larva and grows at the expense of the fat body. Okay, they are parasite, obligate parasites. So they suck off all the nutrition from that larva. Okay. So in case of a heavy infection, the fat body is consumed. The larva fails to pupate since the pupa depends on the food stored in the fat body for its nourishment. So the larva is eventually eaten up. The fat body, what is there inside the larva, is eaten up. It's consumed fully. So the larva cannot go on to the next phase as the pupa stage. Okay, and it eventually dies off. The fat, it's an obligate parasite. This certain fungi like Coelomyces and Microsporidium and Coelomyces. Okay. There's invertebrate predators like Toxorhynchitis larva. It's a large larva which feeds on the larvae of other smaller mosquitoes, including those that transmit diseases. Okay. So these are all anti-larval measures. Okay, petroleum oil, organophorous compounds as emulsifier suspensions, insect growth regulators, bacterial larvicides, fungi, and all. Okay. Then coming to chemical and biological control in in case of anti-larval measures, you can use expanded polystyrene beads. Okay. So what is its purpose? It spreads on the surface of water to form a floating layer. A layer of 1 to 2 centimeters is sufficient. If it covers, it has to cover the surface. Small polystyrene beads, but it's very lightweight. So if the wind comes, it can fly away. So you have to use it in a place where there is it's closed. Okay, or sites where water remains confined, like for example wells. Okay, see the diagram. that man is putting the beads in the wells, and the wells almost fully cover the surface. You can't see the water. You can only see that polystyrene beads. Okay. It's not been used in a very large scale in our country, polystyrene beads. Then there's juvenile hormone analogs. Interferes with the embryogenesis, morphogenesis. Prevents development of larva into pupa, or pupa into adult, mesoprene. Okay. It's extra. It's desirable that you know it, but you have to know that anti-larval measures. Okay, the first ones that I told you. The chitin synthesis inhibitors interfere with the molting process. They kill larvae when they molt. Okay, that is diflubenzuron and triflumeron. And there are natural enemies into the environment. Okay. And there's larvivorous fishes, Gambusia. That's one example. Other one is Lebister reticularis. Okay. So they are voracious eaters of mosquito larvae. Okay. Then that is anti-larval measures. Now coming to the anti-adult measures. So first one is space sprays. What do you mean by space sprays? Space sprays are those where the insecticidal formulation is sprayed into the atmosphere in the form of a mist or fog. Okay. So the examples are pyrethrum extract, technical malathion, deltamethrin. Okay. So when we use pyrethrum extract, the problem is it doesn't have residual action. For that short time it will act. Then it cannot ensure that after some time, when you keep the doors and windows open, the mosquitoes will come again inside. So whatever is inside will get killed, but from outside again there can be entry. So it doesn't have a residual effect. So after spraying also, the effect is not going to last for a long time. For the immediate time, it will act. Okay, shock acting. This example space spray. The coming next one is to the indoor residual spray. What is indoor residual spray? Insecticides remain on the surface in the form, size and quantity suitable for insects to pick up contact and sufficient to exert a lethal effect over a long time. That's the difference between indoor residual spray and space spray. Space spray is for short time, indoor residual spray for the longer time. So even if after spraying, sometime also that effect will be there. That effect won't go. So mosquitoes after some time also after spraying, you must come and sit and come into contact with that spray. It has a lethal effect on the mosquito. So the examples of the insecticide: DDT 50% vegetable powder, BHC, then deltamethrin, malathion, cyflothrin. See the residual effect in weeks. For DDT is 10 to 12 weeks after spraying, the effect will still remain. As for BHC, it's 6 to 8 weeks. So, coming to problems to space sprays. What is the problem? The effect lasts for shorter period. So, I had to repeat at least once a week, I told you. The cost of equipment, operational as well as maintenance is very high, space sprays. Okay. And it needs specially trained staff for maintenance and repair. So, there is also problem with pollution. So it can cause acceptability problems. Now coming to the problems of indoor residual spraying. So it can leave visible deposits on walls. I mean after spraying you can see the marks on it, on the walls or surfaces wherever it's sprayed. Then it's not very acceptable. Okay, painting or replastering of walls or application reduces or eliminates the efficacy of the insect. So when after spraying and you put some other coat of painting, there's no use to it. Reduce the effect. So you have to live with stains also. I don't know about this point. So people may be reluctant to allow strangers into their house. Because that's the least important point. It's okay if you leave out that option also, that point also. Okay. So then there's something called zoo prophylaxis. What do you mean by zoo prophylaxis? So zoo prophylaxis is a reallocation or introduction of cattle or domestic animals between the settlements and mosquito breeding sites. For example, see this diagram. This is a ring of cattle sheds on the outskirts of village with houses near the water sources. Then coming to the personal prophylaxis, mosquito nets. Mosquito nets, the size of the opening of the net is at most importance. Okay, it should not exceed 0.0475 inch in any diameter. So the mosquito nets, there are two types: insecticide treated mosquito nets and nylon nets are preferred. Here synthetic pyrethroids are used for impregnation. Okay, permethrin, deltamethrin, cyflothrin, lambda-cyhalothrin are used. So the insecticide that is used in insecticide in treated mosquito nets. Okay. So long-lasting insecticide nets means the mosquito nets have the insecticide incorporated into the fiber, so you don't need to reapply it on the surface. It's there in the fiber itself. Long-lasting insecticidal nets. Then coming to the other personal prophylaxis measures like repellents like Odomos. Yeah, you know about Odomos, right? So here NN-diethyl tritolamide, that is DEET, Indolone, dimethyl phthalate, neem oil. So the effect can last for 4 to 6 hours. You are applying a coat so that repels away the mosquitoes. Screening of buildings with copper bros having 16 squares to the inch is recommended. So they are costly. It's a plastic or metal is preferable to metal because the latter may corrode. And others, mosquito hitting sweater, full cover of hands and legs, use of fan at high speed. That's what can be employed at household levels without much extra cost. Then there are insecticide vaporizers. I have heard a lot of negative points against it. Okay. They are used in the form of coils, mats, liquid vaporizers, and spray. Okay. So then there is the genetic control measures and other anti-adult measures. So there is sterile male technique. Okay, it's a species-specific and environmentally non-polluting method of mosquito control that relies on the release of a large number of sterile mosquitoes. Mating of released sterile males with native females leads to decrease in the female reproductive potential. Ultimately, if males are released in sufficient numbers over a sufficient period of time, it leads to total local elimination or suppression of the mosquito population. Okay, so the most common way of sterilizing them is with the radiation. So the males are sterile and they mate, can eventually lead to the elimination of the local species. So cytoplasmic incompatibility is another method in that sperms and eggs are unable to form a viable offspring. The effect arises from changes in the gamete cell caused by intracellular parasites like Wolbachia. So the male mosquitoes, after mating, they produce sterile eggs which don't get fertilized, then they don't become larva, pupa, etc. can't go to that cycle. They're sterile eggs. Okay. You don't need that much in detail about genetic control, just know the names, okay, methods, names, okay. So what are the causes of failure of genetic control? Use of genetic control for mosquitoes achieve little success. Political reasons, non-acceptability by people, etc. Then depends upon the males how they mate and all. Okay, so it's not a foolproof method, genetic control. Then coming to the insecticide resistance, it's a development of an ability in strain of insects to tolerate doses of toxicants which would prove lethal to majority of individual in normal population of the same species. DDT was used very extensively later on, led to a development of resistance in great number of mosquitoes. Okay. So why does resistance develop? So the resistance is quick to develop to compounds with high effective kill, long residual, and highly selective at a single biochemical target site. So this toxicant is transformed into a non-toxicant. It's converted into a non-toxicant form in the body of the insect by various enzymes. So all these enzymatic changes are carried forward and transmitted through genes, a single or multiple, to the offspring or to the eggs. Okay. So this leads to development resistance and makes use of insecticides a headache. So the key elements of IVC strategy are advocacy, social mobilization, and legislation. So the IVC principles have to be understood. Okay, and the communities should, social mobilization means the communities should participate and be involved in it. And there should be proper legislation for those who don't obey the rules, because it's not only themselves who's being affected. The region, the state, the district itself is being affected. So there should be legislations, people who go against it. And the collaboration within the health sector and other sectors, like agriculture development projects, urban sector, industrial development, they should all come forward and work together. It's not only health sector, not only agriculture, not only farmers, not only the household. Everyone should come together. There should be collaboration. The integrated approach should be practiced especially in high-risk areas and in epidemic situations. Okay, all the methods, all possible methods should be tried out at once, rather than relying only in one method exclusively. It should be evidence-based decision making. And you should keep on doing operational implemented research on which ways the operation can be made better, how the implementation can be made better. Research should be going on. Capacity building has to be done at central and as well as peripheral levels. So this is the diagram I was talking about. So they asked about integrated vector control. I'll draw this diagram. IVC in center, then biological methods, natural enemies, insects, fishes or larvae, whatever, which naturally eat this larva or the mosquitoes. There's larvivorous fish, example Gambusia, Libestor reticularis. Then there's microbial agents like Bacillus thuringiensis, Bacillus sphaericus. Okay. So they produce a protein, there's a delta endotoxin, the toxic crystal, which acts on the gut lining, on the digestive system. So they go for starvation. Then there is insect growth regulators. Then there is adulticides, PDT, HCH, BCH, larvicides, stomach poisons, fumigants, mineral oils, personal protection methods like bed nets, repellents, full clothing, then screening of the buildings. Okay. Then there is source reduction and environmental control measures like intermittent irrigation, water level management, land filling, channeling, draining of the waters. Then health education of the community through school education, through mass medias, through TV, through mobile apps, whatever. So all this together make up integrated vector control. So vector control is at a crossroads. So whatever gains which we have made of the malady control is threatened by the insecticide resistance. So you can't rely exclusively on the chemical methods. We can't do away with it completely. At the same time, we should use other methods also together in an integrated, coordinated manner for effective control of the vectors. The modest improvements of the current tools and techniques could help dampen the current expansion of many arboviral diseases. So innovation of a new transformative technology is a prerequisite to any real hope of achieving regional elimination. That's what about the topic. If you have any